Hi, this video is about power, inner power, how to access it in yourself, how to use it and how to expand it. So the first thing that I want to make really clear, the kind of power we are talking about here is really your inner power, your ability to have power over your thoughts, your emotions, your experiences, how you react to things. It really has to do with your personal development, with how much mastery you have over yourself in all aspects of life. Things, for instance, of your body, how much in which way are you able to control how you take care of your body. There's a lot of people that eat too much, don't move enough, and they feel like, yeah, I know I should do it, but somehow I never do it enough or how I would like. That's a way of not exercising power over yourself, for instance. Look at emotional level. That are people that can get really overwhelmed by emotion, even if the in proportion to the big picture of their life, that emotion is really limited, so they can overreact, and that can have to do with a kind of lack of power on an emotional level, on a lack of contact with your emotions. On a mental level, you can get really stuck, really confused and distracted by a thought that is taking all the space, while you know you should spend time and attention in your thinking activity on other things that are more urgent at that time and that you need to function properly in your life. With your behavior, when you do not have enough power, you have, for instance, behavior that you do not want to have. You lash out, or you do things you would like to be able not to do, or you do not do things you would like to be able to do. And on a social level, you may have, in the relationship with other people, you may have interaction where you don't feel strong on your feet, and you don't feel that you can approach everybody, and there are people that you need to stay away of because they trigger something in you, or you don't know anymore what you have to do around these people. On a more spiritual level is where you experience, when you do not have a lot of inner power, you experience a kind of a mist, of an insecurity, of a sense of disconnection. These are just examples. The reality is that the inner power is something in the relationship between you and yourself. So also the way that a disbalance manifests, it can be really personal. These were just examples to give you an idea on how you could experience an insufficient inner power. At the same time, what I want to say is that the power, it is yours. The power, your inner power, it is yours and it's available. You don't have to go and get it somewhere else. It can be developing the relationship with yourself. But imagine your inner power, you can imagine it as a treasure that is hidden inside of your system, but it's already there, it's already available. It's just a question of making steps to getting more and more access. Because you can imagine that with inner power, it's not about going from not having it to having it all. It's a process. It's also a process that is in many ways organic. Growing up, having experiences, you grow in power. Imagine when you come out of your study period and you get employed for the first time. Even if you can feel really self-assured about what you have studied and what you know, you are for the first time in a new environment. So that will require the development of certain experiences that can be literally learning technical things, but also experiencing the emotion of relating to a different place, discovering what happens inside of yourself when you are triggered by a new environment, the way you think. It's all a learning process that is going to make you stronger and stronger inside. And it's natural to always need to develop. There is no end to the developing of inner power. However, every step you take in the direction of your inner power, and every step you take, you will experience this. Suddenly you can be, you are able to do a little bit more. You can do a little bit more, and you are able to access a bit more of what you wanted and didn't manage. So it gives you somehow a kind of immediate satisfaction, immediate return, and that's the most important thing. The power is already there. You have it. It is yours. Sometimes we delegate our power. Sometimes we leave other people decide certain things for us. Sometimes we prefer not to get involved in certain things. So we just let it happen. And that's a choice that you can always make. What you can gain out of this video is becoming more and more aware of where you may be making those choices, to be able to make them again and make them in an aware state, much more aware of what's going on, and then you can decide to make exactly the same choices, but then you know exactly what you are doing. Or you can say, hey, I've been delegating power. Do I want to do that? Maybe not completely, or maybe not there. Somehow, to give you an example, when delegating power is absolutely all right, when you are sick, and it happened to me when I broke an ankle, and for 6 weeks I could not put my right foot on the ground. I simply could not put any weight on there. The risk was to not be able to restore my walking ability. So I did. I had 2 really young children, not even at school yet, and I had to delegate a lot of my power from my wheelchair. I just had to delegate here and there about so many things. It was necessary, and it was also a lesson. It was a lesson in why certain things are so difficult, why others were extremely easy. It's not about judging, delegating your power is bad, you should be holding your power, or you have to delegate power. When you are in a leadership position, you really often hear that you are a good leader when you delegate things to others. So there's no right or wrong way. It's the idea here is to become aware, to become conscious of what you're doing, and maybe even discovering for yourself, that's when I was a child, everybody was doing that, and that's where I learned to do that. Okay, am I still all right with that? Or do I want to change the narrative here? That's all we are doing, becoming more aware. And the inner power is really in the freedom of choice, in becoming more and more free of making our own choices, because we understand, we are conscious of what is actually going on, of what we are actually doing, and we can choose instead of just going in a kind of automatic pilot. We are surely spiritual being living in a body, but somehow our experience on earth is mainly physical. So when you think about becoming more aware of your inner power, there's no better place to start than your body. And what I want to suggest here is some ways you can look at how you exercise your inner power around your body. And the first thing that I wanna tell you, you may already know, this is a really well-known fact, but when it comes to your body and taking care of your body, because in using your inner power around your body has to do mainly with taking care of your body. And you may be really, the tendency may be really quickly to think at moving more, doing more exercise, more sports, or eating better, and that's all okay. That's absolutely okay. I mean, I would never be against anything like that. But what I want to invite you to reflect on is that the human being can stay 3 weeks without food. And 3 weeks. And it can stay 3 days without water. But only 3 minutes without breath. The reason I say this is because when you think at your body, when you think at bringing changes, gaining more inner power and use it to take care of your body, you may be want to approach the movement and eating really quickly. And what I invite you to do is to bring it much closer to yourself and bring it much more to what you cannot stay without for even 3 minutes. What I mean is that changing the way you eat, changing the way you move, it could take a lot of time, a lot of effort, and getting really a big project. But focusing on your breathing can be an excellent way to come home to yourself in your body. And there's a lot of techniques to breathe, to change the way you breathe. And the only thing I want to share here is that the slower you breathe, the longer you live. That's what a lot of yogis says. So in the yoga tradition, it is said that people that breathe slowly, so that they breathe less often in 1 minute, tend to live much longer. So that's an indication. You can just notice your breathing and notice throughout the day in different activities, notice how quickly is your breathing, and maybe sometimes make little experiments and try to slow down your breathing even just a little bit. You may notice that your body reacts to it. So by controlling something really simple and relatively easy to control, you can get an effect on all your body. Another way to breathe in a healthier way, and you can combine these two aspects, is making an out breath longer than the in breath. But the idea is that you try as an exercise to have an out breath that is longer than the in breath. Together with slowing down your breathing, you are already doing something that is bringing you home to your body, and that grows, expands your inner power in the contact with your body. And not only. A second area in your life that can really benefit from an increased, expanded inner power is the emotional plane, the emotional dimension. When we have little control, little power over our emotion, they can overwhelm us and can make really difficult to function, to be happy, to use our talents properly. There's a lot of disease, mental diseases also, that starts with a great emotional imbalance. What is really nice is that the emotions have a place in our body, and the same way we can restore the contact with our body by breathing differently, by becoming more aware of our breathing, we can really improve our emotional experience by using breathing as well. So everything that you have just heard about connecting with your body, slowing down your breathing and making your breathing more healthy by having a longer out breath than the in breath, works also to reduce stress, reduce fear and anxiousness. And literally there are some breathing techniques that are used also for depression, post-traumatic stress disorder. Life is worth living because we have emotions. So it's so important to be able to have our power available in that area. Another area where we can experience a disconnect when the inner power is insufficiently developed is the cognitive area, our thinking. So in a situation where you do not have enough power over your thinking, you may get really distracted, really taken by something that has probably also triggered you emotionally, and you keep thinking about this specific thing, but actually you should be doing something else. Maybe because you are at work, maybe because you are you're taking care of someone, and you cannot make this switch, you cannot make this choice. This is an example. While when you are in contact with your inner power, and you can use it also in your cognitive dimension, you are grounded, your thinking is functional to what you choose to do, to say, to feel in that moment. So you are sharp in your thinking, you are effective, you think in a way that is functional, effective, and harmonized with what's going on in your life, and you are making a choice. The grounding, that is again the contact with the body, so we keep going back to that because they are all connecting like a necklace. Every pearl is on its own, but they make it together. They make a necklace only when they are all together. So when you look at thinking, at cognitive areas, you notice that the more you are grounded, the more you are in contact with your body, the more you can think sharply, because there's no distraction. The grounding helps you stay in contact with the reality of here and now. And your thinking becomes so much sharper and to the point and result oriented and pleasurable. The thinking becomes so to the point, so sharp, that is also a pleasure to follow your thinking, and you can literally use your mind, use your thinking to find solution. And your thinking at that level connects even with the spiritual dimension, and you can really make an excellent use of your cognitive abilities. A word about behavior. Behavior is also considered a dimension in the integrative view. And you can think of inner power and behavior in terms of all the things that you do regularly without really thinking on why you do it, how you do it, why you do it. So gaining more inner power, expanding your inner power, it's helpful to become more aware, to make new choices. An example of how we sometimes do things, even rather complex things, without thinking, without realizing, without being aware, is the typical example of someone driving on a road that has been driven, has been journeyed, where you have been often, and realizing that you arrived, but you do not remember how you got there. You went in a kind of a trance state and you drove the auto to your destination. That's also a form of meditation. That's not necessarily negative, but that's a way of how our behavior sometimes can be unconscious, even practical things. Or maybe there are things like you have always done it in a certain way. The way you prepare food, the way you clean the house, the way you go about certain things. I had more often that in meeting someone new, I discovered completely new ways to do things really simple, but it got me thinking. There's so many more ways to do the same things. And then there was once a challenge from a speaker. Said to challenge your behavior, to challenge and become more aware of your behavior, switch the dustbins. Maybe you have one for plastic and one for food rests, and maybe one is right and links. Invert them, and you will be forced to become really aware of your behavior. And by doing that on such little things, you activate some kind of awareness of behavior in general that is going to make you a bit sharper, a bit more attent, and able to notice how much you do it and how is it for you to get out of this comfort zone somehow. So I did that, and I have to say it took really long to get used again. And yeah, it was quite intense. It was for such a little thing, but something you use many times during the day. It was quite an intense exercise. So when you expand your power, you are more able to make eventually these kind of choices and say, I'm not going to do that in this order anymore. I'm going to try a different order. Or I heard some someone experiencing a problem in a situation that decided to introduce a new behavior, a behavior that was really little, really simple, but changed the dynamic in the whole environment, because it was a completely different behavior. It was much more emotion oriented instead of cognitive oriented. It was a little thing, once a day, but it changed the dynamic. So by becoming more free in choosing your behavior, when you gain more inner power, you become able to express your power also these ways, in these kind of ways. The next dimension I want to talk about is the social dimension. Imagine having more inner power, and on a social dimension, having more inner power means being much more in contact with yourself. So when someone triggers a negative feeling in you, you are immediately aware. You don't go so quickly judging the other for what they do. You stay by yourself and realize, I feel really uncomfortable here. What's going on? And you feel, there's something I can do to become comfortable. I can make it work, or I have it to make it work, maybe in a work situation. Or you can also realize, by becoming more in contact with your inner power, that there are some people in your life that are not really nurturing, that there's really little to exchange. Maybe this relationship were really nurturing, really worth it, and they are not anymore. But especially, most of all, you discover over yourself why some people are so pleasant and why some others are not for you. You discover what you need in a social contact. What is also in the social context, you discover how much of your power you delegate to others. An example, a really simple example, in a circle of friends, sometimes there are one or two people that tends to have more power over things like deciding what the group is gonna do. And there are some other people that delegate really gladly their power, not wanting to be in that role of choosing or suggesting something. There are also people that try to get out of this shadow of never suggesting anything, and that can meet mixed success. But what I mean is that when you investigate the social dimension with regards with your inner power, you discovered a lot about yourself, how you relate to others, how you delegate your power, and about yourself, who you are, which kind of things are dominant in you. And awareness brings, again, I'm going to repeat myself a lot in this video, the freedom to choose. The freedom to choose in all areas is the biggest gift you have by being more and more in contact with your inner power. The last dimension is the spiritual dimension. And somehow you can say that a lesser contact with your inner power actually manifests in a lesser contact with your spiritual dimension. But what I want to share, what I think is really relevant, is the simplicity of entering in contact with your inner power on a spiritual dimension. In essence, I believe that one of the most effective tools is silence. And when I talk about silence, it's not so much being in a room where no one is making noise. That's one level of silence, an external level of silence. But the silence is also, for instance, something that is done in silence retreat. It's taking some time. It can be also a couple of hours or half a day, one day, depending on your situation. But really disconnecting from all the possible distraction, having no telephone, no computers, no television, no radio. And creating that silence around you that is gonna help you turn your attention inside. And inside is not gonna be silent immediately. I'll tell you, the first time I tried this, it took me 2 days of white noise in my head, but you are gonna get there. And maybe you are gonna get there much more easy than I have. And it's a question of enjoying moments where you go in this place inside of yourself where you know with enough exercise you're gonna find silence. The idea is that when you contact the silence inside of yourself, you are so deeply in contact with yourself in essence that the only authority, the only one knowing what's right, what's wrong, it's you. The only one feeling, and by right and wrong, I really mean what's right and wrong for you. What do you need? What do you want? That's the power. That's the ultimate contact with your inner power. And for so much, every kind of breath work is gonna bring you really close here. Every meditation is gonna bring you here. Silence is really a concept that in essence synthesize what is inner power on a spiritual level. When you look for the silence inside of yourself, you make an effort, you use your power to make an effort to ensure that you have silence, that you are not disturbed. When you are in a silence retreat, the silence becomes also a way, your silence is a way to respect the silence of others. So silence, stillness inside, just sitting and closing your eyes is also a way to reduce visual distraction and go regularly towards the silence in yourself. I want to go back to the fact that the inner power, it's yours already. You were born with it, it's inside of you. You can rediscover it, you can expand it and learn new ways to use it, but it's there. So what I want to suggest is here some ways you can look at your life to recover, to do this kind of archaeological work and rediscover your power. The power is already there and you also manifest it already, much more than you realize. So the invitation is to go back, look at your life entirely, look from where you were a child and look at everything that you have achieved. For instance, study. Maybe you finish your basic school with a really good grade. If you were in a system where there were grades, or maybe another milestones in your study career, or maybe you are much farther with your education than the rest of your family. Look at everything, or maybe you managed to study exactly what you loved and you are now doing that job. You may have forgotten that that was a dream of yours and you may have grown a bit, it has, maybe that's the job after so many years had become a bit of a habit, but you used to love that. Look the positive in everything that you've done. The same is maybe you've done sports, where you had positive experience, where you won something, where you excelled, or maybe you did some voluntary work, maybe other experiences in your life, maybe you have done journeys, you have traveled, and that you're really happy about those experiences and having those in your personal curriculum, let's say. What is really important is looking for the positive. There are, for instance, natural characteristic of people that are sometimes judged, and that can be either way. You can be too sensitive or too aggressive or too bossy or too pleasing. Really often there are judgments, and if you look carefully, each of these characteristics, to use for really common, that are common amongst people and are commonly judged upon, there is a really positive side in all of them, because when you are too sensitive, when you are really sensitive, you are often also really empathic and able to connect with other people on an emotional level. When you are really aggressive, you are normally really able to assert yourself. And if you learn to own that, you can make it into a really positive thing. You can say no with a smile. No, thank you. And set your boundaries and be assertive. When you are too pleasing, you are extremely flexible. You can function really well in a group environment, in a team environment. Not everybody can say that. And when you become aware of that, you can use that skill, not let it use it. So don't let other people use you because you are so flexible, but just use it as a way to assert also your personal power, because you don't really struggle with being so sensitive, so flexible, I mean. And what was the other I said? But this is just an example. You can turn around every characteristic. Everything that's as one name, there is always another side of the coin. So you can call it aggressive, but you can also call it assertive. It's also about how you use it. So everything that you experience in yourself, or that you have been told in a way that you experience as negative, make the conscious effort, ask help also to others if that's necessary. Send me an email if you struggle with something. But turn it around, make it positive, and discover how you can use your power by turning it around. Actually, the activity itself of finding the turnaround, it's already an empowering activity, because you become from the victim with a fault, with something that needs changing, you become the protagonist with a skill. So you're making actually this enormous change by turning around characteristic. And this is when you come across things in your life experience, doing this curriculum of everything that you have done, that you have achieved, that you have learned, something that feels like negative. Turn it around, empower yourself, and discover the pearl in this sea of mother that you may experience as characteristic. Let me take a note. When you overcome difficulties, you learn a lot. When you come out of a relationship, you learn a lot. Find out the little treasures hidden in the things that you overcome in your life, and really make a beautiful curriculum of everything that you are capable of, that it's your talent, inborn or developed, and create this beautiful picture of yourself, and do it creatively, because creativity is also a way to do things your own unique way. And by doing that, you come in contact with that essence we talked about when you go towards your inner power on a spiritual dimension. What is also important is you can look also at projects, things you have completed, things you have done within work, within voluntary work, within study, looking at an important project you have accomplished, you finished. You can look at what you gave. You can also look at what you have been giving to your environment, to others, and I'm not talking so much about things like money, but things of giving your energy, your time, your attention, and summarize that as well, and see your skill, the skill that is in there. Becoming aware, that's a way to expand your power. Becoming aware of what you are able of. Inner power, it has to do with empowerment, feeling capable of, having control, feeling vigorous. And this is a way of retracing back the way you already proved yourself you are powerful, you have inner power. and having this base to build on and to expand even further. To expand even further, there is a really simple exercise that you probably already know because it's really no news. And in its simplicity, it's extremely powerful. For 30 days, that's the time it takes to change. So that's the time you probably need to change the way you approach yourself with regards to inner power. Every day, at the end of the day, write 3 things that you are satisfied, happy about. Could be things you did, things you achieved, things you did in a way that you are satisfied about, talents or skills of yourself that you thought about, you put at use, that you, even if you just thought about and remembered a time you applied it, just minimum 3. If you have more, by all means, praise yourself and make it even more glorious. But 3 is achievable. And if you think at the end of your day, back at your day, you will find 3. And after a month, after 30 days, you will have 90 positive things about yourself. As much as possible, try not to repeat yourself, so that you really have at the end a nice collection to add to your curriculum. So your curriculum is a lot also about your history, and this is gonna bring you more in the present with how your power is actually exercising an influence in your life at the moment, how you are using it at the moment. The last reflection, looking also towards the future, toward expanding your perception of your inner power. It's inspired by an article by Tanya Katan. She talks about the way we undersell ourselves. Not everybody, but majority of the people, when you send a curriculum or when you react to a vacancies, for instance, a job posting, I mean, you tend to minimize what you're able of. If you don't have 10-year experience in something they ask, you may sell yourself a bit short. And what she invites to do is to become a bit observant of how you undersell yourself, how you do it in your work. Maybe you do it also amongst friends. You know, when a friend eats something you have been cooking and says, it's delicious. And a lot of people react like, oh, that I just took what was in the fridge, you know, instead of saying, thank you, I'm really glad you like it. And it's not easy, but the idea is that you analyze where you undersell yourself, how you undersell yourself. Are there areas where you do it more often? Or are there ways you do it more commonly? Maybe observing also how other people do that. And what the importance of doing this is realizing which kind of person are you presenting, and are you satisfied with the kind of person you present. You have me, to give you an example, you may have spent years studying and accumulating knowledge to prepare yourself to a certain job, and then when you apply for that job, you sell yourself short because of emotional insecurities. So try to become more aware of how you do that, and what is the result in your life? What does that mean for you that you do that? What is the result that you get? And are you completely satisfied with that result? Another really important question is, how could that be different? How would it look like if you would not undersell yourself anymore? How would the text of the conversation or the text of the email look like? How would you react instead? What would that change? Well, first of all, how the dialogue would look like differently, but also what would that mean for you? How would your life change? Which kind of interaction would you have if you were doing that? It's gonna be different. I went through a change like this, and the interaction were different. I did it in a different way without really thinking through it. It was part of my development of becoming more in contact with my power. But it can be really interesting. You can notice also how other people are doing it in a way that looks much more like the way you would like to do it, and take inspiration from there. And start to imagine how it would be if you were more self-confident and more in contact with your power when you are in an interview, or when you go on a first date, or where you have friends eating things you have been cooking for the first time. Everybody has a vulnerability where they feel really like afraid of the judgment in certain situation more than in other. And something also really, really important to help you also overcome the fear you may have to change from one attitude to the other is ask yourself, what could go wrong? And when you reflect on that, be really honest about what is, how bad is that really? Is that really, really bad? Or it's a risk that we can take as something we can digest in a couple of days if it goes wrong? Because sometimes we don't think about what literally could go wrong, and we miss opportunities to build on our power, to expand our comfort zone, and we take a step back instead. So consider, if you were taking the risk of changing and stopping to undersell yourself and starting to sell yourself as a professional, as a proficient cook, or as a really fine date, to give these some example, what is the worst that could happen? And think about how you could cope with that worst. How can you make it as less likely as possible? How can you what can you do up front to avoid that risk? And how could you eventually recover from the worst case scenario? If you put some energy in that, you may find that there are solutions available. There are things that can be done, and there's a lot that can be handled without not extremely negative consequences. It could really be worthwhile. And the last concept is that where we are now with respect to our inner power is our comfort zone. The zone outside of the comfort zone is called the learning zone. So when we stretch our comfort zone, we just go learning. We don't go in a dangerous place. We go in a place that is going to challenge us to learn. So expanding our power is actually a learning activity. It's learning about yourself, about what happens when you are triggered. It's about learning how comfortable or uncomfortable you are in certain position, and by doing that, becoming more and more free to make choices and to give shape to your comfort zone and to make it fluid and something you manage. Not being managed and limited by your comfort zone, but comfort zone as something that grows with you.